Okay. Check, check, and we are live. It's been a long time. I shouldn't have left you. Yeah, it's been a minute since I've done one of these live chats, and we're doing this one at 5 p.m. Normally, I like to do these at 6, but lately I've been operating on baby time. So we're doing this one a little bit early. It, again, has been a while since I jumped on the live chat, but I feel like this is a pretty slow week overall, boxing wise. And so I think that it's a good opportunity to kind of hit a bit of a reset, before we get into this final dash heading into, all of the year end stuff. And obviously we have Tyson Fury Usyk versus Fury 2 that's taking place right before Christmas. So, there are some good fights between now and the end of the 2024 calendar. Another one of which is the couple of rematches, one of them between Emmanuel Navarrete and Oscar Valdez. But all in all, I thought that, again, it would be a good opportunity to kind of catch up on a lot of the boxing news. Sometimes when you have like 1 week of activity followed by another, sometimes the discussion kind of gets lost because it's moving at such a quick pace that you never really have a time or have a moment to kind of hit the pause and really just digest what's taking place in the world of boxing. So I've kind of set aside this time so we can do that. Now, I will start this off by recapping much of last weekend's action, which there was ton, because Jake Paul versus Tyson took up so much of the oxygen in the room. There was little discussion on some other pretty significant fights, and not just Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano too, because that was the Paul versus Tyson co-main. That one got a good amount of attention, and we're going to talk about that as well. But I'm mostly talking about the Zurdo Ramirez versus Chris billam-smith card. I mean, of course, there was the main event fight, but there was also Jose Ramirez versus Arnold Barboza, William Zepeda versus Tevin Farmer. So there's a lot that I want to get to. And again, I want to get on a lot of this news, as well as some other recent fights and fighters that I think people are kind of reanalyzing or maybe overanalyzing. We're looking at Boots Ennis, Bam Rodriguez, Keyshawn Davis, Abdullah Mason. We're looking at a lot of different fighters. Sometimes we're looking at them in a different way based on their most recent performance. So I want to get into all of that. But and then just different news that's taking place. Turki Al-Sheikh buying ring. That's a pretty significant event, especially if you enjoy the separation of promoter and sports media. Now, it's not like Ring was totally independent before Turki bought it. He bought it from Golden Boy. So, but I guess what I'm trying to say is when I looked at the Ring top 10, for instance, in any division, when looking at the top 10, I didn't get the impression that the people placing these fighters in their respective top 10s in their respective divisions was influenced heavily by Golden Boy, the promoter. It seemed like they were at least operating independently. I would like for it to stay that way under the ownership of Turki Al-Sheikh and the Saudis. Now, I also don't think that there was as much room for corruption when Ring Magazine was owned by Golden Boy, because if you think about it, Golden Boy, ever since losing Canelo, and really before that, Canelo was kind of holding them at a top tier level as a promotion for a while. But although they do have good fighters, I mean, they have Zurdo Ramirez, who just captured and unified cruiserweight titles. But Golden Boy, I see currently being a clear number 4, like at best, maybe even number 5. Like, are they a bigger promotion worldwide right now than Queensberry? Look at some of the people who are under Frank Warren's banner right now. I would say Golden Boy might be the number 5 promotion going right now. Now, they might be number 4 if, PBC can't get their stuff together and get more, programming on Amazon Prime. Yeah, then maybe Golden Boy reclaims that number 4 spot. But they've been a rung below the match rooms, the top ranks for some time now, for a few years. So I don't think that there was as much room for corruption in Golden Boy owning Ring. I thought that Ring, again, was still operating independently, even if they were owned by a promoter. Turki Al-Sheikh has so much more pull, so much more money, so much more leverage in just kind of getting boxing's biggest publication to bend at his agenda. Now, he has kind of come across as the impartial promoter thus far, right? He seems like he's just dedicated to making the biggest and best fights cross-promotionally. Like, fighters aren't directly signed, for the most part, with Turki Al-Sheikh. They're signed to this promoter who's working with Turki. They're signed with Matchroom, who's working with Turki. Signed to Top Rank, who's working with Turki. And he is pretty much the head honcho putting these Riyadh season cards together. With him owning Ring Magazine, I think that you have more room for corruption. Not to say that it's going to take place. I'm just saying that he is a powerful enough entity, more powerful than Oscar and Golden Boy today, where Ring Magazine has the possibility of losing some of its journalistic integrity. I hope it's not the case. And we're going to talk a little bit more about it. Again, I don't necessarily have reason to believe that they would just, as a publication, bend to Turki's, agenda and his wishes. Not saying that it's the case. I'm just saying that I hope that that they remain operating independently. And I want them, they took the website down. Usually that's what I go by when I look at, like, okay, so who are pretty much a rough estimate top 10 in any division. I would go to Ring and they would give you their division by division top 10. Some divisions have a Ring champ, others don't. But I looked at them as being the most credible ranking source, more credible than ESPN's, more credible than any other promotional body or publication. And they are temporarily down as a website. So Turki is buying Ring Magazine. There was a coming soon on ringtv.com, I believe. And he's recreating the previously defunct magazine itself. So the hard copy magazine, he's looking to relaunch that. It's amazing what you can do with boatloads of money, right? So that's what's going on right now with Ring. And I'm looking forward to them putting the website back up there. I hope they keep that division by division ranking. Lee Van is in the house. Thank you for coming through. Legendary SS Jackson. Salute. Thank you. Yeah, you're right, Lee Van. They're bringing back the print mags. Yeah, they took that off the magazine stands. What was it? Sometime, was it this year or last year? It was very recent when Ring stopped publishing the hard copy magazine. They just went to a digital article generator, basically, and website. So that is good news. It's, even though, again, it's like there's so much money being infused on the Turki Al-Sheikh side, I just hope that these gains that the boxing world appears to be making under the, stewardship of Turki, I hope that it's sustainable. Because the minute he says he's not interested anymore, what's left of boxing at that point? For as long as he's interested in it, it feels like, we're kids in candy stores right now. We're getting a lot of the fights that wouldn't otherwise be made, like Artur Beterbiev versus Dmitry Bivol. And we're getting such a frequency of these Riyadh season cards with not only really good main events, but deep undercards. That's another thing that was lacking. I would say that generally when you would see, I think that PBC, one thing that they were doing well was when their cards weren't always as frequent. Sometimes they operated with a lot of frequency on Showtime, but when they would load up on a big card, usually it would be like really good fights, like 3-4 fights down the bill. Right now, Turki Al-Sheikh and the Saudis are by far giving you the best cards from top to bottom. Yeah, Lee Van said he has one of the magazines with Inouye on the cover. That's worth a pretty penny. Interesting. I used to, collect like baseball card Beckett's and a bunch of baseball cards and different sports cards. I haven't looked at what the price guides have them listed as. I used to also I used to subscribe to the Source magazine, and one of the moves that was taking place, someone had put all of my Source magazines. Source was like the main rap magazine throughout the 90s, basically, and into the 2000s, but mostly throughout the 90s. And I had like month by month by month, and they were all gone. They were in a box, and then they were like, when there was some move going on, they disappeared. I don't know what happened to them, but I was looking recently at like how they're priced right now, and I'm like, oh my God. Not only would I want to like reference them, just to like open them up and look at some of the stuff. It's very good, if you're journal, if you take a journalistic historic approach to hip hop, just like in boxing, it's good to have some of the hard copies so you can remember what was being said about such and such fighter or such and such recording artist at the time. So yeah, that was a big bummer, especially when I go and I see what some of those individual magazines are going for right now. But yeah, so Turki buying Ring magazine, I look at that as being a pretty big deal. But let's get to last week's action. And we'll start off with the, what do you want to call it? A fiasco, a mega event, which it was. Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson. I'm looking at this and I watched the fight and I'm coming back to y'all. Like, what did you expect? You know what I mean? Like, what did you expect? And what always surprises me when it comes to Mike Tyson is how deluded some people are into thinking that we're going to get like a blast from the past and he's going to show you some of that vintage Iron Mike Tyson ferocity. And I couldn't get around, and I said this in the preview, I just couldn't get around the fact that he's 58 with a bad will and looked terrible 20 years ago when he was in his last couple pro fights and didn't look that good against Roy Jones. Yeah, he got the better of Roy Jones, but Roy Jones recently lost to Anthony Showtime Pettis, a former 155 UFC champion. Roy Jones lost a close decision to him in a boxing ring with boxing gloves on. And Anthony Showtime Pettis is so far past his prime. So I made next to nothing out of, Mike Tyson beating this version of Roy Jones. But again, some people are saying, Mike Tyson, he still has enough to beat Jake. I'm like, that's like saying that your average 58-year-old, a 58-year-old NBA Hall of Famer is able to go head up, one-on-one or run the court with your average, let's say Division II, Division III college player, or even a good high school player. 58 is 58. You're not going to keep up with the 20-something-year-olds. You're just not. And people will say, well, this is boxing. You don't have to run up and down the court like you do in basketball. I'm like, boxing is like 80% legs. I feel like that part, people kind of forget. Boxing is so legs based that it doesn't matter what you can do with your hands if your legs can't get you in position, if you don't have balance. And these are the things that go when you get into your 40s, let alone 50s, let alone late 50s. So I wasn't expecting Tyson to do much. I thought that he had a chance in the first round, okay, and then in the first minute of the second round. And then that was all you were going to get. That's what I said in the preview. And I feel like that's more or less what I saw play out. Like, by the time you saw him like biting on his glove a whole lot and just kind of standing there like he's standing in mud, and then you see him, you remember when he got rocked a little bit when Jake Paul was just kind of pawing with the same left hand? He like tapped him. And you see Michael kind of like stumbling, like, I'm like, this isn't looking good. And from that point forward, yes, Mike Tyson did throw another couple of interesting, left hooks and looked like he was launching into a couple more punches throughout the fight. But there were several rounds. If you look at the actual CompuBox, there were multiple rounds where Tyson landed 0 punches. You don't get that in any fight. 0 punches in multiple rounds. It was pretty much everything I thought it was going to be. And I'm just happy. I was saying, ideally, I would like for this to devolve into a glorified sparring exhibition. Let them showboat each other, maybe throw a few non-lethal punches. And Jake Paul did throw some stuff with some heat on it. And to Mike Tyson's credit, the ones that Jake was hitting him cleanly with, Mike took it pretty well. He took it better than Evander Holyfield took Vitor Belfort's. But I don't think Vitor was playing as nice with Holyfield as Jake was with Mike Tyson. So there is that. Pablo B is in the house. Cheers. Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Stan Tucker, what's up, Dad? What's going on? Thank you for coming through. Caesar is in the house. Thanks. You said the Mike Tyson fight made you sick. Never ever wanted to see any legend fight, or you don't want to see any legend fight. I never will watch something like this. This was pathetic. Yeah, it was. And again, I'm just glad that Tyson didn't end up on his back. So credit to Jake Paul for at least kind of reading the room, even though the crowd was upset, with the performance. But again, what did you expect? Did you expect Mike Tyson to use his legs and to come in with the, and have his legs close the distance like that over the course of a few rounds? Did you think, and people say, well, look at Mike Tyson. He looks like he's in like really good shape. I'm like, yeah, like good enough shape to go jogging. You know what I'm saying? Like, not to lace him up in a fight, a 20-something-year-old with some heat. What are we doing? What are we doing? So again, this is more or less like what I expected. Was it sad to see Tyson just kind of standing around? Okay, they both got paid a ton of money, and I just hope that Tyson on a personal level is good. A lot of people, I think Richard Dwyer, online boxing analyst, thinks that Tyson was having like a nervous breakdown in the ring. He even referenced like Oliver McCall, and he said that that's why Tyson was biting his glove. I know on the broadcast, Mauro Ronaldo was saying that he has seen Tyson bite on his glove in the past, and I'm thinking, I don't remember Mike Tyson continuously biting on his glove in the way that he was doing it. Again, not to say that I believe that he was having a nervous breakdown, but I mean, there was like a weird look on his face, walking down the aisle. He tripped on his way down the aisle. But it was bad. It could have been worse. I'll put it like that. They got paid. Nobody seemingly got hurt. Okay. And I was saying, I hope that it devolves into a sparring exhibition. And you know what? If it does, I'll forgive them. I'll forgive them both for wasting our time. Nobody got hurt. That's all I wanted. So other than that, it's more or less what I expected. Caesar said, boxing is so dead right now. Many boxers are just, just not active. Yeah, generally the top boxers will box like a couple times a year. Like if you've made it to like, elite money making, big money fighter, then you usually fight twice a year. We're getting another year where Gervonta Davis fights once. He fought once last year. Tank Davis fighting once a year. I mean, that's bad for boxing because he's one of the best sensations in the sport, and we're barely getting to see him. His last fight before that Frank Martin knockout was that Ryan Garcia fight. And now it's not going to be until early next year that he's fighting, and I'm still not sure whether it's going to be Lamont Roach or someone else. But yeah, the fighters are just not active enough. And now you've got, PBC kind of going through their transitional growing pains where you've got like their whole roster either leaving the promotion or they've just been on ice, or they've maybe fought once in that transition. Like Gary Antoine Russell, like fought once, lost a close one to Alberto Puello. So you've got a lot of talent that's just kind of sitting out. And, we're going to get to that Jose Ramirez versus Arnold Barboza fight, but inactivity is the worst thing personally for a fighter's career, but also for like the boxing fanfare, or for people to just give a damn about, fighter A, B, or C. If they barely ever fight, people, just lose interest. I also agree with that, Lee Van. Yeah, boxing, Turki Al-Sheikh right now is putting boxing right in people's faces with some of the best matchups to be made. Like basically, if a fight is big enough, it's been a part of Riyadh season lately. Top Rank is almost operating like more of a mom and pop shop lately. Like they don't have a ton of big mega fights going on. You know what I mean? Like they had Lomachenko versus Devin Haney, but it's, since that they've had like Teofimo Lopez versus Steve Claggett. They've had pretty good fights, but no, unless I'm missing something, like Shakur Stevenson just left Top Rank. It's not looking great for them. And I'm hearing that their ESPN deal is running out. I'm wondering, and I'm also hearing that another promotion is going over to DAZN. Now, is that promotion what was just announced in Queensberry? Maybe that's what they were talking about, because Queensberry just announced that they're going to start fighting, having all of their fight cards on DAZN. So then you would have Matchroom, Golden Boy, and Queensberry all fighting on that platform DAZN. So what's going to happen with Top Rank when their ESPN contract runs up. Are they going to go over to Amazon Prime? Are they going to go over to DAZN? There's just a lot that's kind of, hanging in the balance. And the fighters' careers are passengers to these promotional transitions. Let's see. Caesar, that is true. UFC does more frequently put the best fighters against the best fighters. Like if you are a champion, aside from John Jones, who we'll see if he fights Tom Aspinall, but generally, if you are the champion, you will pretty soon be fighting the next best in the division. Like, Ilia Topuria just knocked out Volkanovski for the title, and his first title defense was against Max Holloway. So you're always you don't have too many tune-up fights if you're an elite UFC fighter. Let's see. Nicholas, thank you for coming through. You said if Netflix did another live boxing event, what would be the ideal main event to bring another big audience? How many views do you think Canelo versus Crawford would do, for example? Canelo versus Crawford would kill it. It would kill it. Just through the promoting, if you give it a couple of months, get that, people, generate the conversation around it, start showing Crawford and Canelo highlights, start, dissecting it where you're like, well, Crawford is like a shade taller than Canelo, and he's got that 74-inch reach, and he is one of the smartest boxers in all of boxing. And then you look at what he did to Errol Spence, and, you could get enough people to think that he's going to be competitive, and, Canelo, isn't at his absolute peak. I wonder whether Crawford is, and, Crawford would be jumping up multiple divisions. But to answer your question, I think it would be huge, and that would be a great next Netflix fight. That would be a great example of what that next Netflix special should be. Canelo versus Crawford would be a great one. I'd imagine that, other promoters from Eddie Hearn to PBC are going to fight tooth and nail to try to get Canelo versus Crawford. But yeah, if that was on Netflix, it would do huge numbers. And I'd imagine that the crowd would be more satisfied than what they got in Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson. But yeah, those are my initial thoughts on what we saw with Paul versus Tyson. What's Jake Paul going to do next? First of all, I hope Mike Tyson doesn't re-enter a ring. I saw Holyfield try to get him to do a trilogy fight. Mike Tyson said, I love you, my brother, but our trilogy is our friendship. That's what Mike said to respond to Holyfield, saying, hey, the people want it. No, the people don't. Come on. But with Jake Paul, does he go back into fighting low-level pro boxers? I was thinking, and I was talking about some others, what would be an ideal next fight for Jake Paul? Because, before this, before the Mike Tyson fight, he fought former 170-pound UFC fighter Mike Perry. But before that, he fought Ryan Borland, a low-level pro boxer. And before that, Andre August, another low-level pro boxer. Dusted them both off in the first round. So I was thinking, and I don't know I don't remember if I brought this name up or if somebody else in our boxing chat brought it up, but would Sergey Kovalev be a good opponent for Jake Paul? Sergey Kovalev earlier this year lost a decision against a virtually unknown fighter. Like, Sergey Kovalev is way past prime, but and he's kind of looking like a shot-ish fighter, not like Riddick Bowe, or I don't know if y'all remember the 90s Olympic gold medalist David Reed shot fighter, but Kovalev is clearly on, way past prime. Would Jake Paul versus Sergey Kovalev be an appropriate next matchup? He's at least 12, 14 years younger than Mike Tyson, right? I don't even know if is he in his 40s yet? If he is, he's in his early 40s, but he recently had a boxing fight. Yes, he lost that boxing fight, but Jake Paul versus Sergey Kovalev, I kind of think that might be a decent matchup. I wouldn't hate that matchup. Pablo B thinks that Jake Paul might look for the rematch with Tommy Fury. Tommy Fury, I think they just said that he's about to fight. Who is it? He's about to fight Tommy. They just announced something, I think, today, who Tommy Fury's going to fight next. And I don't think it was a pro boxer. It was one of those. It was something that I thought would be an interesting next fight. Because remember, Tommy Fury recently fought KSI. Oh, Darren Till, the former UFC fighter. That's who it looks like Tommy Fury is going to fight next. Darren Till. I think Jake Paul would knock Darren Till out. Darren Till was, being billed as like a good stand-up UFC fighter until he got, stopped by Tyron Woodley, and Darren Till got knocked out by Jorge Masvidal. And then it was mostly downhill for Till. But that's who Tommy Fury is going to be fighting next. But, with Jake Paul, I really think that Sergey Kovalev, like if he wanted to turn heads and to get people to say, oh, damn, okay, with the win, maybe let it be Sergey Kovalev. But there's a big chance, I think, that Kovalev just beats the hell out of Jake Paul. That's a strong possibility. But yeah, I want to talk for a moment also about Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano too. Obviously a super close fight. It often is with these high octane 2-minute, 10-round fights. But I feel a little bad for Amanda Serrano, and I think a lot of people do, because these were two razor close fights and Taylor got both of the decision wins. And Amanda Serrano looked like she was cooking before that head clash caused that nasty gash over her eye. To me, that changed up much of the fight. Like, I mean, the cut itself was gruesome. And you heard Serrano's corner, the guy who did the interview, in the ring after the fight. You could tell he was kind of saying, I don't know, ref. That's nasty, man. It's looking bad, man. It sounded like he wanted, the fight to be stopped. And in retrospect, it would have been a prudent move. It wouldn't have been a fan-friendly move. But they would have gone to the scorecards, because what round did the cut take place in? Was it the third or the fourth? But I think that enough rounds had gone by to where it wouldn't be a no contest. They would go to the scorecards. It's a tough fight to call. I did think Katie Taylor, after that gash, she won. She seemed to me to win many rounds. She was backing Serrano up, but Serrano still looked like she was landing the cleaner shots, and the CompuBox looked more lopsided than what I thought I saw. I would have expected the CompuBox to look more even than what it was. It looked like, the CompuBox, I think they had Serrano landing more than 100 punches more than Katie Taylor. I didn't see that, but I thought that it was a coin flip going into the scorecard. And I just thought that it was very unfortunate that cut, it changed Serrano immediately. Like, you saw how it affected her. She immediately starts getting hit with clean shots. She immediately starts getting backed up. And Katie Taylor, who is a lot bigger than Serrano, she looked bigger than Serrano. And think about it. Serrano's, with the exception of Serrano's most recent fight, her last few fights before that, basically every fight since the first Taylor fight, except for one, were all at featherweight. They were all her becoming undisputed and fighting a 3-minute 12-rounder and trying to fight in her not her native Puerto Rico. She's from New York, but her country of ancestry, Puerto Rico. She's been operating at 126. And I think that a lot of people forget that when they see this clash. They're like, oh, they look about the same size, but that would be the equivalent of, I don't know, like Luis Alberto Lopez at 126 going up to fight William Zepeda. You know what I mean? That's what it would be like. And yes, Serrano has been a weight jumper and a weight dropper throughout her career, but she's fought like at 118, 122. I think it's as little as maybe even 115. Did she do 115? I know she did 118, one belts there, 122, same thing, 126, 130, 130. She's been all up and down, but at, their natural, Katie Taylor is naturally significantly bigger than Amanda Serrano. And these were two even fights. But I also felt a little bit bad for Katie Taylor. Yes, she was awarded 2 very close wins, and those will forever go on her record. So she still only has that one loss to Chantel Cameron. I thought that her rematch with Cameron could have gone either way. She got that decision win. I thought that Delphine Persoon beat Katie Taylor in their first fight. Katie Taylor got that decision win. But I felt bad for Taylor in the sense that both of these fighters are pouring their hearts out. They're leaving it all in the ring. And you come out of the other end of that fight and you're getting showered with boos. And yes, it's not like the crowd was directly booing Katie Taylor. They were booing the decision, right? But it's unfortunate that you have such a good fight that kind of gets ruined a bit based on the controversy around the scoring, right? So another example, Triple G versus Canelo 1. I rewatched that recently. That was a tremendous, interesting fight, but it's so clouded by the controversial scoring that people often lose sight and forget about how good of a fight it was. I think people are going to quickly forget about how good of a fight Beterbiev versus Bivol was because of the controversial scoring. And we get this in several different fights. You know, it's like people lose sight of appreciating what the fighters gave us because the story coming out of the fight and into the next day was about the controversial scoring. And unfortunately, that's kind of what, you know, Taylor versus Serrano 2 left us with in what was one of the fights of the year. It's just unfortunate, but yeah, they both fought super well. Again, I thought that Serrano was very damaged by that clash of heads. And you saw Katie Taylor, like when they would get in the clinch, Taylor would like start pressing her head up against Serrano's face and around that eye area. Was it intentional? No, I don't think that the initial clash was intentional. I thought that it was incidental, but I thought that she was kind of leaning on it a bit after the initial clash, you know? But I'm not going to call Katie Taylor, a dirty fighter. It's just, look, head clashes also muddied up her last fight with Chantel Cameron. I saw how many times they just smacked faces. I'm like, it became hard to watch in the earlier rounds because they either came close to clashing heads or they clashed heads like 4 or 5 times. And I mean, don't you hate it when you're watching a fight and you start thinking too much about, they're about to clash heads again. I mean, I remember the beginning rounds of Josh Taylor versus Jack Catterall 2. Rewatch those first 3 or 4 rounds. They smacked heads and faces like 3 or 4 times where they go boom and they both like walk away like crouched, kind of hunched over, like grabbing their eye, and the ref has to call time to the action, and they both like take a moment to like shake the cobwebs out. It's just it messes the viewing experience, up when you're so concerned about head clashes. But in this case, it was a nasty clash, and I thought that it did impact the fight. But Serrano still did fight her heart out. I don't think she's the type to have wanted to call the fight off because of the cut. These fighters train so hard, and they just want to leave it out. They're warriors. They really are. And Serrano was just determined. She wasn't hearing any of that. Oh, it's bad, man. It's bad. She appeared to want to go back out there. So I don't think she's going to regret any of this. Let's see. Pablo B said, I saw Taylor winning the first fight and Serrano winning the rematch. That's funny because I thought Serrano edged the first fight, but then, after rewatching the first fight, I could see how it could be a draw. I could see how it could go either way. This fight, I kind of felt like Taylor won because of how many of the later, of the middle and late rounds she appeared to win, because she really was backing Serrano up. Like there were a couple points that I thought that Serrano was a bit hurt and that Serrano might get dropped or really start wilting. I thought that we were getting there because it looked like Taylor was starting to bully Serrano back, even though Serrano was still trying to let her hands go, landing a lot of like kind of head spinning, head rocking types of shots. It looked like Serrano was in more distress as Taylor was throwing her punches and coming forward. So yeah, I thought, again, initially I thought Serrano won the first fight. Could have gone either way. Second fight to me could have gone either way, but I had a feeling that Katie Taylor was going to win that one. But yeah, so I want to kind of like pivot over to the under-discussed Zurdo Ramirez versus Chris billam-smith unification fight. Zurdo Ramirez wins a somewhat close. I didn't think it was that close, really. I thought it was like 8 rounds to 4, 9 rounds to 3, but although Zurdo was winning the rounds, you know, billam-smith was still fighting his heart out. So billam-smith was landing some clean shots and was still, you know, very game. But Zurdo, man, like ever since he hit cruiser, these last 3 fights against Joe Smith, against Gulamarian, and now against Chris billam-smith, who was coming off of like recent wins off against Lawrence Okoli, who a lot of people thought was a top 2, top 3 cruiserweight. Masterneck, who's another good cruiserweight, and Masterneck was outboxing Chris billam-smith before the injury. But then Richard Riakporhe, because remember they were trying to get a fight between Lawrence Okoli and Richard Riakporhe. They were trying to get them two together. But here comes Chris billam-smith spoiling the party for both, beating that one and then beating that one. So I thought Zurdo Ramirez was really going to have his hands full, and he did to an extent, but I actually thought that it was going to be closer than it ended up being. I didn't think, like, I knew Zurdo was the classier boxer, right? But I thought that Zurdo would really wilt in the middle rounds, and that Chris billam-smith's style of pressure was going to really start wearing Zurdo out. And it did to a degree, but not to the extent that I thought it would. Like, Zurdo was still winning more of the second half of the fight than I thought he would. He was still just breaking him off with nasty combinations. He was really looking like the second best fighter at cruiserweight. And I'm thinking, there is one other belt holder in the division other than Zurdo, who has 2, and Jai Opetaia, who, although only has 1 belt, is kind of seen as being the best fighter in the division because he beat the other best fighter in the division, who is Maris Briedis, who's pretty much, you know, arguably the best cruiserweight in the, we'll say, the post-Usyk era at cruiserweight, right? Because for a long time, Maris Briedis' only loss was to Usyk in the semifinals of that World Boxing Super Series. So Briedis got beaten by Jai Opetaia twice. And so I'm just hoping that maybe at this point, Turki steps in and they make, you know, with Golden Boy working here and who's promoting Opetaia. But long story short, a Riyadh season / Golden Boy / whomever fight card. Wait, is it Matchroom? I don't think Matchroom's. Yeah, I think Matchroom's got Opetaia, right? Well, basically a collaborative effort in making a 3-title unification fight between Jai Opetaia and Zurdo Ramirez. I think that would be a really good fight. I think I would favor Jai Opetaia at this point, but I'm telling you, man, like Zurdo Ramirez keeps on exceeding my expectations. I keep thinking he's this good of a fighter. He ends up being this good. I keep thinking he's like this good of a pure boxer. He ends up being this good. So yeah, Zurdo Ramirez, for that long stretch at 168 where he was holding a belt but fighting nobody, except like Jesse Hart was his best opponent for like most of his career when he was on Top Rank. It was looking like it was a very, you know, padded record type of career. But since he went up to light heavyweight, fought a couple good fighters, fought an old Sullivan Barrera, and then lost to Dimitri Bivol, he has been fighting good fighters and beating most of them, beating everyone but Dimitri Bivol. So Zurdo Ramirez has really kind of turned the corner on making his career mean something. Like, the Hall of Fame sounded like it was a distant, long shot. He's actually kind of marching closer towards it. He is now a former 168-pound belt holder. No, he didn't fight the other champs at the time at 168, who were Callum Smith holding the WBA, David Benavidez holding the WBC, and was it Caleb Plant and Ust Katagai before that holding the IBF. Gilberto Ramirez didn't fight any of them. But again, since he's left 168, his career, and really since he's left Top Rank to a degree, his career has really started to mean something. Lee Van, you thought Taylor fought dirty? No sympathy for her? Yeah, you know, it's arguable. Like, is Josh Warrington a dirty fighter? Or is he just a fighter who places his head low, comes across with his combination, jumps in the pocket like that, and always finds the other person's eyebrow with the crown of his head? I don't know. I mean, these patterns start developing and you start wondering, like, damn, like, I know that this is a part of your fight style, but like, you have to be aware that your style is making head clashes so much more likely. And it would be one thing if Katie Taylor was only clashing heads against southpaws, but it's not just like Amanda Serrano. It's several other fights of hers. Like, and same with Josh Warrington. Same with Timothy Bradley. But yeah, so Zurdo Ramirez, now a unified champion. Billam-Smith, I think he's 34 years old. We'll see what's next for him. But again, I'm hoping that Zurdo Ramirez, he might have like a mandatory challenger or something like that. But who else is there, like, for Zurdo or Opetaia to fight? You've got, it's the cruiserweight division. It's not stacked with a whole bunch of, fighters that the boxing community cares that much about. Who's he gonna, like Dorticos, And then on the Zurdo versus Billam-Smith undercard, we had the, I like this matchup too. Jose Ramirez versus Arnold Barboza. I actually didn't do a preview for this one. I did one for Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson. I did one for Taylor versus Serrano too. I did one for Zurdo versus Billam-Smith. But I was personally as interested in Jose Ramirez versus Arnold Barboza as I was any fight of that weekend. Because, Jose Ramirez, who lost the fight to Arnold Barboza via close but unanimous decision. Jose Ramirez, it's been frustrating because ever since his battle for Undisputed, where he lost that close fight against Josh Taylor, he's been like a one fight a year guy. And, you have your idea and your opinion, your perception of who the elite fighters in any division are. And for a while at 140, it was Josh Taylor, and then you could argue Regis Prograis or Jose Ramirez as number 2. I felt like it was that way for a little while, right? You had other names kind of creeping up into the top 3, 4, like Jose Zepeda. You had some others, right? And since then, you've had other guys storming the gates. Subriel Matias, who now got beat by Liam Paro. You've got some other names in the game. Jack Catterall, who would have ever thought Jack Catterall beats Josh Taylor and Regis Prograis? But now you've got these other players. But for a while, the class of the division was Josh Taylor and then Prograis and Ramirez, who haven't fought each other. I felt like now we could say with some clarity and some certainty that Jose Ramirez isn't in that club anymore, right? He just lost to Arnold Barboza, who I see as being a really good fighter, but just shy of like A- level. I look at him as being, and I'm saying like elite, of course, like by regular boxer standards, he's an A fighter. That's why he's in these meaningful fights. That's why he is a near elite fighter. But on the elite level, I look at him as being a kind of a B+ ish fighter, B+ ish fighter. He's a good boxer, and when he needs to bite down and scrap, he could do that too. I wasn't sure who I would have picked in the preview. I think that I would have ultimately have picked Jose Ramirez to kind of break Barboza down, similarly to how he broke Jose Pedraza down, and a little bit less devastating than what Ramirez did to Richard Commey, who he stopped. He stopped Commey. But I had enough respect for Jose Ramirez's style, his somewhat calculated aggression, and his IQ to a degree to think that he was going to come out on top against the pretty damn good Barboza. But then it's like, well, wait a second. What about how badly he got hurt multiple times against the aging, the old, if you will, Rances Barthélemy? But then I'm like, well, Rances Barthélemy is one of these guys who's always going to be tricky. He's an elusive southpaw who just throws like these awkward bombs whenever he wants. Rances Barthélemy is like, it's kind of weird like that. So I think that he's always going to give people somewhat of an awkward southpaw, heavy-handed issue. I mean, he dropped Gary Antoine Russell, in that fight. I thought that fight would stop early when Russell dropped him, because Russell just returned the favor when he dropped Barthélemy. I thought that fight should have gone on. But yeah, I kind of gave Jose Ramirez a little bit of a pass between the inactivity and him having an awkward opponent. I'm like, okay, let's chill. Like, let's wait and see what Jose Ramirez then does against Barboza. But Barboza, you could argue, is the best kind of pure boxer that Ramirez has fought. I'm trying to think of a since, like if it's since Maurice Hooker, like who was kind of outboxing him early before he got broken down, beaten to the body and stopped. And Maurice Hooker over the years kind of showed that he wasn't like physically built up to code to take enough damage from these other elite fighters to not get stopped. And he's, became a kind of a shot-ish fighter after the stoppage at the hands of Jose Ramirez and then the one against Virgil Ortiz and then losing to Blair Cobbs. But I think Barboza might have been the best sweet science, pure boxer, sharpness, when you talk about like sharp punching and such, that Jose Ramirez has fought. Even sharper than the version of Jose Pedraza that Ramirez fought. So maybe it shouldn't be too big a surprise that Barboza had enough grit and enough durability to handle what Jose Ramirez brought, and that Barboza was able to extend the early success that Maurice Hooker had against Ramirez and extend that out further and deeper into the fight, where you don't succumb to the pressure, where you are able to keep on, getting off first and to win the exchanges and to keep your back off the ropes against this guy. I thought Barboza did a really good job at that, and maybe it shouldn't have been super surprising, but it's just one of those instances where it's a paradigm shift, because I, again, still had Jose Ramirez as a possible top 3-4 in the division. Now I feel like I could say with clarity that he's no longer that. Like, now I think that maybe Jack Catterall beats Jose Ramirez. I think Devin Haney certainly if Devin Haney's okay after that Ryan Garcia stuff, if he's okay physically, mentally to continue his career and he's as good as he was before that beatdown, Devin Haney beats Jose Ramirez. So that kind of brings me to what should be next for Jose Ramirez, who lost, again, this close but unanimous, observably lost that fight, clearly lost the fight. Who should he fight next? And I'm thinking maybe now would be the time, better late than never, to go ahead and do Regis Prograis versus Jose Ramirez. Maybe now is the time to do that. Prograis just lost to Jack Catterall. Jose Ramirez just lost to Arnold Barboza. I feel like that fight should have happened years ago between Prograis and Ramirez. Maybe just do it now. As for Arnold Barboza, I think that a title fight should be next. I have to see which sanctioning body he is currently like the number one contender of. Because Liam Paro is about to defend his title against Richardson Hitchens. So there's that. But the other champs in the division right now, if you bear with me, again, Ring Magazine took their rankings down. So I actually have to kind of look at this at a more from a sanctioning body standpoint. But the other champions are Jose Valenzuela, who they were saying was gonna rematch Pitbull Cruz. I don't know if that's still the case, but Jose Valenzuela is a WBA champ, so I don't think it's gonna be Valenzuela and Barboza. And again, Liam Paro's got a fight lined up. I'm thinking maybe Arnold Barboza versus Teofimo Lopez, because that is actually, I just checked, the sanctioning body that Barboza is ranked number 1 at. So Jack Catterall is ranked number 2 in that sanctioning, with that WBO sanctioning body. So it looks like Teofimo Lopez, even though they're talking about Teo versus Devin Haney, which I would love to see, it looks like the more realistic fight would be Teofimo. Well, not realistic, because if money talks and the sanctioning bodies sometimes stand down, but if the WBO is going to enforce their rules, it would be Teofimo Lopez against either number 1, Arnold Barboza, or number 2, Jack Catterall. So I'd be fine, happy with either one of those, but Jack Catterall is due. Arnold Barboza and Jack Catterall are both due for title shots. And I want to talk a little bit about a one more fight from that card that was a little further down on the undercard. And this was actually a really good fight between William Zepeda and Arnold Barboza. I'm sorry, Arnold, Tevin Farmer. William Zepeda is obviously a buzzsaw in the division. He is one of the must-see guys. Like, who are some other must-see guys? Obviously, guys like Gervonta Davis are absolute must-see, but like Emmanuel Navarrete, to me, is must-see just because he is I've never seen a fighter who fights like that. Very unusual style. But with William Zepeda, some people will blow you away with their power. Some people will blow you away with their speed. William Zepeda blows you away with his engine, with his volume. And if you don't have a plan on how to slow down this guy's, Andy Cruz is a must-see guy at 135. I agree, Pablo B. Ventru's in the house. What's up? Thank you for coming through. Heck yeah. William Zepeda, you have to stand your ground. You can't back foot, sweet science, stick and move, and let him keep on hunting you. It's not going to work. Like what Rashidi Ellis tried to do against Roman Villa. That's not going to work with William Zepeda. We saw a sweet scientist in Maxie Hughes try to pull that off against William Zepeda. And if I was to point you towards a William Zepeda fight that really shows you what this guy is about, watch either William Zepeda versus Maxie Hughes. You could watch his last fight his 2 fights ago against Giovanni Cabrera. You could watch him when he made a name against Tanahara. That was the one where he was the B-side. Golden Boy had plans for Tanahara, or was it Golden Boy I think it was Golden Boy who had plans for Tanahara. William Zepeda shut all that down. Or you could watch William Zepeda versus Jojo Diaz. This guy starts moving downhill. And if you think that you're going to be on the outside, kind of tit for tat, slip, tap, tap, move, and be able to just steal rounds without confronting this guy and really drawing the line in the sand, check out William Zepeda versus Maxie Hughes if you're planning on doing that. And so I was thinking going into Zepeda versus Tevin Farmer. Tevin Farmer is a back foot guy who's coming off of, he had a 4-year layoff after he lost his 130-pound title to Jojo Diaz. He had a several-year layoff, had a fight or two coming back, and then he fought against Murataya, who's one of those top-ranked prospect contenders. Top 10 fighter probably at lightweight right now. But Tevin Farmer fought well, but Murataya clearly won more rounds and started to beat up on Tevin Farmer a bit. I was thinking, if Tevin Farmer fights how he usually fights against William Zepeda, Tevin Farmer is about to get stopped, I think for the first time in his career. There's no way he's going to be able to hang a full, I think it was a 10-round fight against William Zepeda. But to my astonishment, Tevin Farmer did draw the line in the sand. He dropped William Zepeda. And yes, he got the heck beat out of him, but Tevin Farmer, this fight against Zepeda gave me a bigger appreciation from Tevin Farmer, even more so than his pretty long run. He had several title defenses with that one belt at 130. I was more impressed with him in this close split decision loss to William Zepeda than I was even as he was a title holder. I'm like, man, Tevin Farmer's fighting his butt off in there. He boxed his butt off and he fought his butt off, because if you're not willing to fight, to dig deep, take hundreds of shots and fight William Zepeda, you ain't gonna make it. You ain't gonna make it. You're gonna look like Giovanni Cabrera and Maxie Hughes, where their body language reads, "Get me the hell out of here." That's what it looks like. It's, I use the term or the phrase, the treadmill from hell. Certain fighters put you on it. Like, who else puts you on a treadmill from hell? Navarrete does. For a while, Venado Luis Alberto Lopez did. There's certain fighters that are just relentless, and they will throw punches for as long as you can stand up and take them. They're going to keep on coming, and they're going to actually pick up the pace in rounds 5, 6, 7, 8. They start off, at a lower pace, in the first 1 or 2 rounds, by the time you're getting in the 3rd round, they're putting 6 punch combinations together. And these are hard punches that Zepeda's throwing, and he's digging to the body. But again, Tevin Farmer drew the line in the sand and fought him. Counterpunch very effectively. He boxed really well. He rolled with so many of those punches. But, you know, there were so many body shots where, you know, these guys get the dog beat out of them sometimes, man. Like there was one, and I can't remember the exact round. I'm going to rewatch the fight and try to give the actual round. But Tevin Farmer was like in the trenches with William Zepeda, and they're just exchanging. Tevin Farmer's like rolling, then trying to throw a hard counter, catching Zepeda for, you know, several times. But Zepeda started doing the thing where Tevin Farmer's trying to walk him down, but Zepeda is like, as he's walking back, because again, Zepeda was getting backed up during some of the fight. Zepeda, while walking back, was taking this step back, but he was like planting as he would step back, firing a right hook to the body, taking the other step back, boom, firing a left hook to the body. But there was a moment where Tevin Farmer was about to throw a punch, and as he loads up to throw, he gets hit right in the middle of the belly by one of Zepeda's punches, and you saw Tevin Farmer go from about to throw a punch to not throwing the punch. And he kind of just went like, ugh. And then he kind of like regained his wits. And the amount of poker face that these fighters have to not tip their hand and show the opponent that they're hurt, it's really amazing. And I'm like, I replayed that. When I was watching this fight, I like played that, I rewound that part like 5 times because I'm like, oh my God. Like, I don't know if the people who just saw this understand how much that punch hurt Tevin Farmer. But again, he regained his bearings. And like 3 seconds later, you would never know that he just got his guts blasted out by that William Zepeda punch. But yeah, props to William Zepeda. I mean, look, William Zepeda is everything he appears to be. He was William Zepeda in that fight. Tevin Farmer exceeded my expectations. And what I thought was going to be a, hey, you know, especially after that loss to Murataya, I thought that this fight was going to be the beginning of the end for Tevin Farmer's career. But I actually think that Tevin Farmer earned another big opportunity with that showing that he had against William Zepeda. So look, what does this mean in terms of how I think William Zepeda versus Shakur Stevenson plays out? You know, Shakur Stevenson's going to have to show that he is down, because look, he's not going to be able to maintain range against Zepeda like I don't think he will, like he did against Oscar Valdez. Zepeda's a lot bigger than Valdez. He's got a longer reach, taller fighter, and when the guy starts moving away from William Zepeda, he closes the distance by sticking a jab out, then stepping forward to close the distance. Oscar Valdez is short. He's got short arms. You could play different games to make sure that you are outside of punching range. You're not afforded that same luxury against William Zepeda. So although Tevin Farmer was able to do what he did against William Zepeda, and although Shakur Stevenson was able to do what he did against Oscar Valdez, I can't say that those things translate into Shakur Stevenson versus William Zepeda. Not that I necessarily think that that fight is happening next. I do think it would be wise of Shakur Stevenson to take another title defense against a mandatory challenger, and not a mandatory challenger named William Zepeda. Find somebody else to fight as you're recovering from a hand injury fight. Don't go right in there with Zepeda if you've got a questionable hand. That's kind of how I see that. But I don't know. Look, I know that Shakur Stevenson does what he does very well in managing range and in kind of like, he's a sharpshooter. He's a sharpshooter, and he just boxes his opponent's ears off. Zepeda is going to be coming forward. There is a chance that Shakur Stevenson is a clean enough counterpuncher to put Zepeda down or to hurt Zepeda like Tevin Farmer did when he caught Zepeda coming in. Because not only did Farmer drop Zepeda, there was another moment in that fight where Zepeda came forward. Tevin Farmer threw, I think it was a straight left hand, because that left hand, you know, Shakur Stevenson's another southpaw, but that left hand was money for Tevin Farmer. But there was one punch where Zepeda's face was coming forward, and Tevin Farmer put his all into this left hand, and he missed him by that much. And I was looking at that. I rewound that part 3 different times, and I was thinking, damn, if Tevin Farmer connected with that punch, I think Zepeda hits the canvas again. If not hits the canvas, he gets jelly leg, because that would have been a nasty collision between Farmer's left hand and Zepeda's face. So Zepeda's offense is devastating. It's a treadmill from hell. It's like he's on the freeway. No, he's, if you were to translate the energy from a fighter per second or per minute, with Gervonta Davis, he'll, and I'm saying like driving at a certain speed and showing what you're doing in the ring. Gervonta Davis is like kind of cruising at like 40 to 50. But when he explodes, 200 miles an hour, right? For that 2 seconds. William Zepeda is going a cool 90 to 110 and just maintaining that throughout the fight. No, it's not as explosive in any one moment as Canelo or Tank Davis or Deontay Wilder or some of those guys are. It's not that explosive per punch, but it's like you've got the like the tea kettle, or, you got something cooking and it's kind of slowly building in temperature. I feel like that's William Zepeda's style. He's going at a fast pace, and he's going to see if you've got the guts, the cardio, and the punching power to gain his respect in order to make it. Because if you don't have those three things, the heart, the power, and the durability and cardio, he's going to stop you. He's probably going to stop you. Jojo Diaz made it because he's got the IQ and he had the durability. Most people don't. So we would see like what would happen between Shakur versus, Zepeda. I don't know how Shakur, I don't know if Shakur Stevenson has a Tevin Farmer level chin, because I learned that about Tevin Farmer in that Zepeda fight. Tevin Farmer could take a hell of a punch. He could take 50 hard punches. I don't know what Shakur Stevenson can handle in terms of punch absorption. He doesn't get hit enough for me to have found out. And then there was another really good fight, by the way, on that Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson undercard, Mario Barrios versus Abel Ramos, that resulted in a draw. That was one of the fights of the year. I know it sounds ridiculous to say that there were multiple fights of the year in one weekend, but I feel like that's kind of what we got between Taylor-Serrano 2 and Mario Barrios versus Abel Ramos. These might all, by the way, be fight of the year contenders, but to me, there's only one fight of the year. I know that there are other great fights that we can name from this year, and we're headed to that part of the year where we start doing those year-end lists, right? But there's only one fight of the year so far. That is Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk 1. That's what it is. The magnitude of the fight, how the fight played out, the ebb and flow, the Usyk hot start, Tyson Fury taking over, Usyk drop, almost stopping Tyson Fury in that one round, and then it kind of, evening out by the end of the fight. That's your fight of the year so far. All these other fights, really good fights, but that's the fight of the year, in my opinion, so far. Let me get to some of what you're saying before I get to the last bits of news before we close things out. Let's see. Pablo B said, Arnold Barboza Jr. doesn't have enough power to be a part of the elite with the 140 division. I agree. He kind of lacks power. He's got a lot of dog in him, right? Sometimes a lot of the sweet scientists don't. He's a kind of a sweet science boxer who does have some grit. But in terms of pure punch or per punch devastation, no, he doesn't have that. But, neither does Jack Catterall. And I look at him as being an elite-ish 140 guy. Let's see. Pablo B said, in my mind, Zurdo Ramirez qualifies as an unprofessional boxer since he missed weight by 6 or 7 pounds. Yeah, that fight against Gabe Rosado, which I'm actually glad that fight didn't happen. No, it's not a good look when you miss weight. That fight was happening, by the way, like less than 3 miles from here, Cal State Long Beach, like at the Pyramid at the college, which is my alma mater. But yeah, I didn't want to see Gabe Rosado. I think that was after he lost to not Bek Bully in the rematch, but against Ali Akhmedov. And there were a couple other fights where like the Munguia fight, where Gabe Rosado just, takes a beating. I mean, he's taken so many beatings over the years, but I didn't think he needed to be in there against somebody as big as Zurdo Ramirez. And that was supposed to be at 175. Like, Gabe Rosado used to be a 154 guy. Then he was a small middleweight. Remember that? He was a small middleweight for a long time. Then in the late part of his career, he's at 168. Now he's going to fight the 6'3" Zurdo Ramirez, who's now a cruiserweight at 175 though. Yeah, that would have been all bad for Gabe Rosado. So yes, it was unprofessional for Zurdo, and that was a really bad look. At that time, I was thinking, damn, is Zurdo even like serious about his career? I was thinking that Zurdo's career might be nearly over. He lost to Dimitri Bivol, and then he misses weight like that. I'm like, man, should I even be taking this guy very seriously anymore? But to me, his last 3 fights against Joe Smith Jr., against Gulamarian, and now against Chris billam-smith, that makes up for that weight, for that missing the 175-pound weight limit. Again, bad look, but I feel like his career has recovered, and his reputation, at least in my book, to some degree, has recovered. Let's see. Yeah, Pablo B, you think that Farmer's performance was impressive? Yeah, I thought that he was on. Look, I did not. I'm like, ooh, Tevin Farmer, and I thought that he was really gonna get the piss beat out of him by William Zepeda, and he did to a degree. He took hellacious shots. Maybe his durability, maybe this was his last stand durability wise, and he hung in there so tough to where it was a split decision win for the A side, William Zepeda. Close fight. And again, he knocked Zepeda down. Zepeda didn't knock him down, but maybe he had to be so durable in that fight that it affects his future fights. This could have been one of those deals. Jay Foreman is in the house. Yeah, thank you for coming through. I said in the top of the hour that I usually do these at 6 p.m., but I've been operating on baby time lately, so I had to do a 5 p.m. one today. I know usually 6 p.m. gives at least people on the West Coast a little time to get off work, you know, maybe get home or something, but 5 p.m., that's a little bit rough. So there were more like late arrivals for this one. And I'm sure that most people are just going to see it after this whole live chat publishes. But yeah, I just wanted to cover a lot of the stuff from this past weekend. And then just talk some news like Turki Al-Sheikh buying Ring Magazine. That was one of the first things that I discussed at the top of the hour. Lee Van, you say Gabe Rosado is a warrior, fought peak Triple G. Yeah, remember when his trainer, what is it? Not Benny Blanco, that's the producer. Benny Briscoe, is it? When he's like, when his dad, Gabe Rosado's dad, wanted the fight to continue after Gabe Rosado's just getting beaten up so badly by Triple G, prime Triple G. And like Benny Briscoe's like, nah, man, he's gonna die in there. Very dramatic scene, and they caught all that like on the broadcast before Benny Briscoe jumped up on the ring apron, threw the towel in, and said, "Nah, saving his fighter, Gabe Rosado." That was a very dramatic stoppage. But yeah, Gabe is a warrior. I mean, look at the damage he sustained against Jaime Munguia several years after that Triple G fight, and he gave like a lot of people good fights. Like he's like a slightly less elite Vanis Martirosyan, who I heard is like really sick. I don't know exactly what the ailment is, but Vanis Martirosyan, I think that it sounded pretty bad. I hope he's okay, but I read something recently that he's not doing too well. But yeah, Gabe Rosado's always been a game fighter. So I want to get to a few other bits of news too. David Benavidez versus David Morrell is taking place early next year. That's going to be a fight between two, near top 175 guys, even though they're not really proven at 175. I know Benavidez is a little more proven since he beat a former champ in Alexander Gvozdyk. But I mean, what is this? I would have rather one of these guys fight like Joshua Buatsi or something like that, who's done more. He's beaten Craig Richards. He's beaten, what was the guy's name who beat, who recently beat Craig Richards on one of those Riyadh season cards? A really good Will Hutchinson. Not Bill Hutchinson. That's a nobody who Adrian Broner beat in a comeback fight. I think it's Willie Hutchinson or something. But I think it's Willie Hutchinson. But yeah, Joshua Buatsi recently beat him, and I don't know. I like. Look, don't get me wrong. I like Benavidez versus Morrell. But I would have rather Morrell prove more in one lane before you get these two young stars or young, very good fighters together. But I mean, because a lot of these promotions work in silos, you only do business with the fighters in your stable. And this is kind of a result of that. It's a good fight, but of course I would have rather Canelo versus Benavidez, and that's always going to be the case. But I think that with Benavidez, it's interesting because it's almost like he's got to wait and see what happens with, if they even make a rematch between Beterbiev or Bivol. Are they going to go right into a rematch, or, you know, are they going to not fight until after the next Ramadan? I don't expect Beterbiev to be back in the ring in the next like 6 months. It rarely works that way with Beterbiev. And I don't think Bivol is in any hurry to fight the Joshua Buatsi's of the division. So it's kind of like a wait and see thing, I think, with Beterbiev and Bivol. So it's in the other near top 175 pounders to at least stay busy and not wait for these two future Hall of Famers, you know? Also, I saw something with Christian Mbili, another top 168 guy. Who did I see that he's gonna likely be fighting? It was a really good 168 guy who he's likely gonna be in there with. I'm gonna have to check that because, you know, since Ring Magazine is temporarily down since Turki Al-Sheikh bought it and is gonna basically revamp it. Oh, Diego Pacheco. They're talking about, I think that they're in talks of making Christian Mbili versus Diego Pacheco. I would love that fight at 168. That's the kind of fight that I would want to see either David Benavidez or Morrell in. But I guess you could say that it is kind of that. I look at Benavidez as being way more proven than David Morrell. I guess that's the problem I have. But I don't have a problem with that fight in a vacuum. Let's see. Yeah, Pablo B, I agree. Gabe Rosado did deserve that great night against Melikuziev, who also recently had a difficult fight. Did you see that? I'm not sure about Beck Bully. Yeah, I agree. Pablo B, Morrell should gain more experience before fighting Benavidez. I would have rather Morrell, like if he was to have stayed at 168, I know he just went up to 175, but I would have rather see Morrell versus Christian Mbili or Morrell versus Diego Pacheco. That's what I would have rather than Benavidez, who really should be fighting either a Beterbiev or a Bivol or a Canelo. Benavidez versus David Morrell. Let's see. I'm going to rattle off a couple other pieces of news before we wrap this up. Martin Bakole and Ajit Kabayel, who was coming off those wins against Makhmudov and then against Frank Sanchez. Bakole just stopped Jared Anderson and has beaten like Tony Yoka. But they were talking about making Martin Bakole versus Kabayel at heavyweight, but it sounds like Kabayel pulled out of that. I think it was a purse bid that was supposed to take place. Kabayel pulled out of it. So it sounds like Kabayel might have another beeline, or not another, but it might have a clearer shot at Daniel Dubois, which would explain why he would pull out of a negotiation against the massive last king of Scotland, Martin Bakole. And it looks like Bakole, since Kabayel pulled out of that fight, Bakole is now turning his radar and setting his sights on Big Bang Zhilei Zhang. I would like both those fights. I would like Daniel Dubois versus Kabayel. I would like Martin Bakole versus Zhilei Zhang. Also, let me know if I'm crazy here, but if we're talking fighter of the year, is there like an outside chance? Well, okay, hear me out. Is there an outside chance that unless Usyk beats Fury again, because if Usyk beats Fury twice in 2024, that's your fighter of the year. No questions asked. Does Daniel Dubois have a chance at being fighter of the year? I'm trying to think here. He beat Jarrell Big Baby Miller. Was that might have been at the end of last year though. That might have been at the end of last year. And then maybe his only 2 wins in the 2024 calendar year were against Filip Ergovic and now Anthony Joshua. But I feel like he's kind of got an outside chance at being fighter of the year. If not, it would be like Bam Rodriguez or Naoya Inoue or somebody like that. Somebody who's been active and beating good fighters. Probably Bam, right? For stopping Juan Estrada. But the thing is, the Sonny Edwards fight was like at the end of 2023. So technically that's not a 2024 fight, but like if he would have fought Sonny Edwards in January instead of last December, then bam, unless Usyk beats Fury twice, Bam would be your fighter of the year because he would have beaten Sonny Edwards and then stopping Sonny Edwards, then stopping Juan Estrada, and then stopping his opponent last weekend, or the weekend before last weekend. Yeah, Jay Foreman. Yeah, Usyk fighter of the year for sure. If he beats Fury in this rematch, which, look, I don't know what's going to happen there. Like, the heavyweight division is crazy. And Tyson Fury, underestimate him at your own risk, right? But yeah, so Bakoli versus Zhili Zhang, I would like, and Daniel Dubois versus Caballero, I would like that too. Caballero's has had a great past year as well. But also, Hamza Shiraz versus Janibek Alimhanula. And I don't know if I have that, pronunciation down, but Shiraz versus either Alimhanula or Alimhanuli or something like that. Janibek. Shiraz versus him. There was going to be a purse bid for that title fight, but Shiraz pulled out of that one. So Janibek is going to have to find another title challenger for his 2 middleweight belts. And it looks like I think Hamza Shiraz instead is going to fight Carlos Adames. I want to make sure that I have that right, because it's either Hamza Shiraz pivoting to fight Carlos Adames, or it's Janibek who's going to be fighting a title unification against Carlos Adames. But yeah, Shiraz has had a really good last 3 opponents as well. He stopped Liam Williams, he stopped Ammo Williams, and he just stopped Martin Denny, who just beat, was it Denzel Ben? No, it was Felix Cash, who Tyler Denny. Did I say Martin Denny? That's like a 1950s music composer. But yeah, Shiraz would have beaten Liam Williams, Austin Ammo Williams, stopping them both, and then also stopping Tyler Denny. That's a really impressive last 3 fights. Like, I look at Hamza Shiraz as being one of those must-see guys. But yeah, let me just confirm whether it's Shiraz versus Carlos Adames that's being discussed, or if it's Janibek versus Carlos Adames. It looks like Shiraz, in pulling out of the showdown versus Janibek, is going to be pivoting to fight for Carlos Adames's WBC belt. Damn. I'm not mad at that fight either. I think Shiraz versus Adames. I just want to see any title unification fight at middleweight. That's one of the more frustrating divisions in boxing. Also, Boots Ennis, what the hell was that? Like, it would be one thing if Boots had a rough start to the fight and then figured it out and started to pull away on the scorecards against Karen Chukazian by the end of the fight, or Chukajan by the end of the fight. But it got worse for Boots as the rounds went on. And the advice that Boots was getting from his corner sounded a little reminiscent of Teofimo Lopez's advice from his dad in that debacle against George Kambosos. That whole, what are you waiting for? Get him out of there. It was similar to that. I was pretty shocked that Bozy Ennis was giving Boots similar direction against a guy who was presenting enough of a puzzle that you had to be strategic in how you're going to make the adjustment. I just didn't hear the adjustments. I didn't see the adjustments from Boots Ennis. It was a really bad showing in that rematch against Karen Chukajan. And then on the other hand, you had Bam Rodriguez showing out on that same fight card. Bam Rodriguez took all the props in that Philly night, in what was another Boots Ennis homecoming. Let's see. Jay Foreman, you said, has there been any word on if and who AJ will be fighting next? No, the only word that I've heard from Eddie Hearn on behalf of AJ is that it's not going to happen soon. So it's not going to happen like in the next 6 months. If anything, it would happen like in the second or third quarter of 2025. So I don't know if that means that Eddie Hearn wants to put AJ in there with somebody else as a tune-up before the rematch with Dubois. But it doesn't sound like, one, there's any guarantee that there's going to be a Dubois versus AJ rematch at all. But it sounds like it certainly isn't coming in the next 4 to 6 months. That's all I've heard on the AJ side. Yeah, that might be. Yeah, that's what it's a wait and see. You're right, Lee Van. It's a wait and see. AJ's going to and Eddie Hearn are going to be sitting and waiting to see what happens in December between Usyk and Fury. Because if you're AJ, do you really want that rematch? I know the pride part of you would want it against Daniel Dubois, but do you really want to fight that guy again? Not to say that AJ can't win, but I mean, damn, you want to talk like losing is one thing, but how you lose is another. It wasn't like this was like AJ was winning and then, Daniel Dubois landed a lucky right and it changed everything. This was like a from pillar to post, from the first round onward, destruction of AJ. And unlike AJ's rematch against Andy Ruiz, I don't think Daniel Dubois is coming in 50 pounds or 30 pounds overweight and won't be able to kind of hunt AJ down as AJ tries to back away and box. I don't think that is an option in a AJ versus Dubois rematch. Yeah, Pablo B. Hamza Shiraz has long reach, power, good technique. The only hope for opponents is that he doesn't have a good chin. That's the only hope. Otherwise, he's looking. And I'm not just drawing a Middle Eastern, comparison. I know Amir Khan is from Britain, but by way of Pakistan, right? But Hamza Shiraz, it's the same kind of offensive conundrum. It's like, man, the guy's got fast hands. He's got some power. He's those combinations, pretty good technique. The only chance that opponents had, and it turned out to be the case, was that Amir Khan didn't have a great chin. To me, that's opponents' only hope in beating Hamza Shiraz, is that you could find the button and knock him down. Good luck, because his offensive arsenal is pretty fierce. Again, he's coming off 3 really impressive stoppages. But by the way, it's crazy when you consider that Amir Khan, once upon a time, beat Marcos Maidana, right? He dropped him multiple times in the early rounds, got wobbled, badly staggered late in the fight, but survived and beat Marcos Maidana. And it's weird because people associate Amir Khan with not being able to take a punch. Well, he had to take some punches against Marcos Maidana, and that's not the only tough puncher Amir Khan beat. So, yeah, he got his lights put out a couple times throughout his career. Danny Garcia put him down and eventually stopped him. Breedis Prescott, early in his career, dropped him and knocked him out. Canelo knocked him out more viciously than anybody. But he also beat a lot of good fighters with good punches. Yeah, I agree. Jay Foreman is probably for the best. AJ should recover. But it's just unfortunate that was, it's just like that sometimes. But AJ was really active. Remember, he came back and fought Jermaine Franklin. And then who did he fight second after that? Was Jermaine Franklin the first one? And then it was supposed to be Dillian White, but ended up being Hellenius. And then the third fight was against Otto Wallin, where he looked really good and then knocked Ngannou out. AJ was riding high, right? And then he had that fight against Daniel Dubois. You want to talk about valleys and peaks. Boxing's crazy. But yeah, I want to thank you guys for coming through. By the way, just a couple things. Keyshawn Davis, that night against Gustavo Lemos, who blew weight badly. A lot of people were advising Keyshawn Davis to not take that fight. That could not have gone any better for Keyshawn Davis. That fight and that night couldn't have gone any better. Also, Abdullah Mason, we saw him really tested for the first time. Got dropped twice in that fight. And it wasn't against a top fighter, but a lot of these prospects, they just mop the floor with their first several opponents, and then you start seeing them like face this type of a task where either somebody's like either outboxing them or somebody hurts them and you see them get wobbled or dropped for the first time. Abdullah Mason got dropped. I don't know if it was a balance issue. I don't know if it was a chin issue, but more questions than answers came out of that one. Everybody's like, wait a minute, because just again, offensively, Abdullah Mason, to me, prospect wise, is a must-see guy. Like, he's my favorite prospect right now, Abdullah Mason. Like, on those top ranked cards, I always make sure I tune in early to catch Abdullah Mason. But I don't know how durable he is. To me, he's got like great hands. Like Shane Mosley, one of the most electric punchers I've ever seen. Shane Mosley also had a great chin. If you don't have a great chin, it might not matter what you can do offensively if you start getting wounded badly anytime you get hit cleanly. So we'll see what Abdullah Mason does going forward. But yeah, he got rocked a couple times, and it might have been how he was stepping and just kind of getting caught stepping in where he gets knocked off balance. When he popped up, it didn't look like it was like a knockdown. Either one of the knockdowns, it didn't look like he was hurt, but he got dropped twice. Yeah, that was a statement win from Keyshawn Davis. That was exactly what Keyshawn Davis's career needed. Because for a while, I was looking at Keyshawn Davis like, man, he's kind of turning into one of these like kind of boring round winners where he's fighting these, these journeymen and he's not stopping a lot of them. That one against, what was the guy's name? Namir, the one that was turned into a no contest after he tested positive for weed against like Albright, I think his name was. Keyshawn Davis looked like he lost a few rounds in that one, but other fights look like he looks good and looks very exciting for the first couple of rounds. Then the fight kind of like simmers into like a boring malaise where it's like, okay, like let's wrap it up already. Like how many more rounds do we have of this? Keyshawn Davis started doing some of that. And then there was the Pedraza fight, but even Pedraza was like not a shot fighter. And I hadn't seen anybody do that to Pedraza since like Tank Davis. So Keyshawn Davis looked really good against Pedraza, but I was more like, was that Keyshawn Davis being really, really good, or was that Pedraza being really, really past prime? But now that we've seen what Keyshawn Davis did against Gustavo Lemos, totally different, opinion. Keyshawn Davis needs to fight some elite guys now. He's on that level, I feel. But yeah, Johnny Gonzalez, you're right, Jay Foreman. Johnny Gonzalez famously knocked out Abner Mares, then got knocked out against Gary Russell Jr. Great power, bad chin. Yeah, thank you, Lee Van. Yeah, thank you for coming through. I enjoy these lives too, man. Yeah, hit the like button, guys, if you haven't. Appreciate that. Yeah, it's been too long. I'm 10 weeks in with my first child, baby boy. 10-week-old right now. And so that's why I did this one at 5 o'clock and not 6 o'clock. But yeah, I want to thank you guys for coming through. Lee Van, Jay Foreman, Pablo B. Heck yeah. Nicholas, thank you for coming through. Ventru, thank you once again for coming through. Stan Tucker, aka Dad, thank you for coming through. Caesar, thank you for coming through. Legendary SS Jackson. Thank you guys. Heck yeah, until next time, I'm gonna try to do, next time an opportunity presents itself, like hopefully sooner, much sooner rather than later. The boxing calendar kind of dies down over the next week, but it picks right back up. So hopefully I could do a live when we get back into the swing of things. But yeah, until next time, guys, I'm gonna do previews on the, there's nothing, I have to look at the calendar again. I'm not sure if there's anything of significance this weekend, but I got some previews coming for next weekend's action. So stay tuned. But yeah, thank you once again for coming through. Hit the like button if you haven't. I'm Woog. Thanks, y'all.